Hey everybody, it's Debbie LaChusa. Welcome to another Living Inspired interview. Today I'm so happy to have Kimberly Elahab. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Elahab, long A.
Kimberly Elahab with me, and she has a very inspiring story. And again, we've had a few of these stories so far that are kind of rooted in unfortunate circumstances. And while obviously we never want to go through those things, it's inspiring to hear people taking those unfortunate circumstances and turning them into something good. And I'm hoping that that's what you're going to talk about today. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. I'm so glad to be here.
You're very welcome. So talk to me a little bit about what happened all those years ago that was painful for you, and how that now today has resurfaced in the form of an inspired idea and what you're doing with it.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, I mean, a lot of times, like you mentioned before, a lot of things that happen to us and what we do with them come out of pain. And that's exactly something that happened to me. When I was 10 years old, my mother, as a young mom in her 20s with 5 children, left and never came back. So that was something from the time from when I was 10 years old up until about a year ago, where I was finally dealing with and processing really what had happened to me, and trying to get some understanding around that. I struggled with low self-esteem, self-love, self-worth, which led me to not really live the life that I know I was capable of living, and making mistakes in relationships and choosing the wrong people because I just felt so unworthy. And last year, I worked with a coach, and I told my story. She had me write it out for the very first time I had ever shared that with anybody. I dealt with all the pain, all the feelings that I had been avoiding all of my life, just in survival mode. You know, back in those days, we didn't get counseling. We didn't get therapy for things that happen in the family, and the things, were said, what goes on in this house stays in this house. So you didn't dare reach out, and talk to anybody about your pain, about your suffering. And then when I finally was able to see myself as a 10-year-old girl, that shocked me. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I had never really thought about how old I was. I was actually 10. And to process what all had happened to me. And so working through that process with the coach, able to really look at the experience, look at what happened to me, led me to kind of an inspired idea from my partner, actually, who kind of thought about was something I could do. So for about 2 decades, Debbie, for about 20 years, I've been looking at entrepreneurship, wanting to do some type of side business, and I've tried all these models and thinking, okay, most of them marketing, writing, I'm good at that. What all these things I can do, looking outside of myself for what I could do. And we were at lunch one day, and he said, well, have you thought about using your life to help other people? I'm thinking, what do you mean use my life? What are you talking about? And he said, you were abandoned as a child. And I said, yeah, I was. And so why don't you try to do something around that to help other women? And I'm like, oh my gosh. At that point, Debbie, I didn't really think that my experience had any value, or that I could really help anyone through that. So once he planted that seed, I really started to kind of think about it, meditate on it, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there are other women like me out there. Did some internet research and realized this is something that I really can do to help other women who have dealt with the pain of being abandoned by their mothers in childhood. And so I embarked upon this journey of life coaching.
I go back to, I hate for anybody to experience pain, but it's part of life. We all have our challenges, and to be able to get to a place, and I think sometimes it is somebody else that, because we're so close to it, we can't see our way out of the box, and someone else can see where we can be of service. And in my experience anyways, I kind of did what you did years ago, like wanted to start a business, didn't really know what I was doing, started. My first online business was a totally inspired idea, and I had a coach help me kind of walk through it one step at a time. And then I got caught up in the same thing as you could do this, and trying to follow what everybody's saying and the systems and all that stuff. And you end up spinning your wheels, and it doesn't always work, and you can't figure out why. And what I've learned, I've been in business on my own for 20 years now, is every time I've done something that's been authentic to me, and it comes from my heart, and it's just something I know that this is what I meant to do. Those are the ones that work. And yeah, you got to have the marketing and all the other stuff, but you can have all that other stuff. And if it's something that's conceived in your head because you're trying to get rich or you're trying to achieve some goal, it seems like it doesn't work. Or if it does, it's always really difficult and challenging. And in my experience, and I'd love to hear how things are kind of unfolding for you to see if it validates this. But in my experience, when you start in your heart and you just start paying attention to the ideas that show up and you start following those, you're supported. It's like you've got, the universe or God or whatever you want to call it is there by your side, helping you every step of the way. And it just seems like things flow so much more easily. Still takes work. You still got to do your part, but it's like the path is just unfolding in front of you instead of you trying to figure out, what do I do next?
Yeah, Debbie, you are absolutely right. I mean, and those type of synchronicities and things start to unfold and start to happen. And one of the very first things was meeting the coach that I initially talked to before I met you. And so I worked with her through the process, actually just writing out the idea, telling the story. And then another thing that happened, I met another coach who has helped me and is helping me build a signature program. So you have to have something to offer. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I never knew about that. So she needed somebody to beta test something for her. So it was right at my price point. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just happened to be in this Facebook group, happened to be at the right time to talk to her and meet her. And we embarked upon this journey together. And I started thinking more deeply about how I can support these women and my whole, what I wanted to offer and what I wanted to teach, because I needed to have something. Yeah, it's great that you have life experience, but what process you're going to take, what journey I'm going to take them through in healing. And she led me through that process. And so that was just amazing in and of itself that happened at that particular time. So it's not been effortless. It has been work, but at times these ideas keep coming, and I meet people at the right time when I need them.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it is work. I mean, I am living and talking out loud about an inspired idea, this whole living inspired path that I'm on. It's like I'm doing it as I'm talking about it. And I am super busy. I mean, I'm having to pace myself because of all the stuff that keeps showing up, the people and the inspired ideas. So it's not like you just sit back and it just falls in your lap and it's wonderful. It takes work. For me, the difference, and I'd love to hear your thought on this, is that you're not racking your brain trying to figure out, what do I do next? Or you're not sitting down and you're mapping out a 12-month plan, which there was a time in my life I did that for many years. And then I'll, here's my strategies, here's my tactics, here's what I'll do. And I have my to-do list, and every day I get up and I check them off, and you can do it that way. But this way, it's like you wake up and you're open, and people show up. The coach shows up. The beta testing opportunity shows up. You got to step into it. You got to do the work, but the ideas come to you. The path lays out in front of you. Would you agree?
It does. And it's being of the years of all these ideas, working outside of myself on these ideas and spinning my way. And I could never figure out why it wasn't working. Like, I'm a smart girl, and I know I can do this stuff. I can understand stuff, but everything was just so hard. It was like pushing a boulder up a hill. And I just could never get the boulder to the top. Just always pushing. And now, since I've acted on this inspired idea, the people show up. The processes are easy to understand. I mean, there was some things like the whole digital marketing and things, I could never even get my brain around the concepts. What is this? What is that? I could never even understand it. But now everything's just unfolding. The people, the opportunities. And I just did a survey, surveying the target audience that I want to reach, the women who have been abandoned in childhood. And the responses that I'm getting, Debbie, oh my goodness, it's been amazing, the insight and the sharing. A simple thing for me as compiling a survey, something I had never done before. And so a coach recommended I do that step. I'm thinking, and the questions and everything. She gave me a little template to work from, and then I made it my own, and everything's effortless. And the responses I've been getting have been so overwhelming. So it's been the journey. When I felt like I kind of embraced my story, embraced and owned that is part of my story, and let go of the shame and embarrassment around it, and coming to the fullness of who I am as a woman with that story and how I can help others, and working from that heart-centered, soulful space. It's not about getting rich. It's not about that. It's, for me, it's about helping women through their own process, and coming into the fullness of who they are as women, as I have done. It seems so, oh my gosh, it's so rich and so inspiring, something that I know, because even as a little girl, I knew I was going to do something to impact others, but I never knew what. And all those little, those ideas, and looking outside myself for what that is, it was there. But then when I got a hold of this, I'm thinking, this is it. This is the impact that Kimberly is going to make. This is what I'm here to do, living in that purpose and being able to bring my whole self to what I'm doing, Debbie. I mean, I said that's part of the purpose of my work, is to be able to bring my whole self to it. Whereas in working many 9-to-5s, we're compartmentalized. It's like we're just a one-dimensional human being. You can't hardly laugh at work. You can't really cry at work. You can't love people. You're just this one-dimensional human being. And with life coaching, I'm able to bring my whole self to the work, which gets me uber excited, and that lights me up. And I just feel so content with where I am in my life right now.
And I think it's that energy that attracts the people and the opportunities, because it's that authentic energy. And I do think you have to be at the right place in your life to embrace it and be willing to own your whole story and be vulnerable, because it requires that as well. And I think we get, like you, I've had a feeling for a long time that there's a calling out there that was greater than marketing. I mean, I was in marketing for 30 years and I was very good at it. I was very successful, but I just had this little, this nagging feeling that there was something else I was supposed to be doing. But I now realize that everything I've gone through, everything I've learned how to do, all the businesses that I've run, they were all part of what brought me here. And I couldn't have done what I'm doing now 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because I didn't have all the experiences, and I wasn't ready to step out and be completely, vulnerable. For the last 5 or so years, I would always tell my husband, I feel like I'm training people in one thing and I still believe in it, but there's this other stuff I do that I'm hiding. And I would, every now and then it would come up and I would say, I don't want to get too woo-woo here. And I'm like, I'm apologizing for how I'm actually living my life and building my business. And that's not authentic, and that's not okay. But you have to get to the place where you're comfortable. And sometimes that just takes time. Would you agree?
I agree. I mean, I've been on this entrepreneurial journey for about 2 decades. And I'm not the same person I was back then. And I couldn't do what I'm doing now back then. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the maturity. I didn't have all those experiences. And so when I kind of embraced, like you just mentioned before, Debbie, embrace all of who I am. It may be too woo-woo for some people, and maybe too out there for them. And that's fine. But however, I'm stepping into who I am fully as a woman. And I think we're in a time where people are craving authenticity. People want to see the real you. They don't want to see the window dressing and all the external stuff. They want to hear some of the dirt, and that you have been through some things, and to see the whole you. And so it feels so good to just take off the mask, take off the makeup. This is Kimberly and her mess and all, and she is just fine.
You know what? It's relatable because we all have it. We all have the ups and downs, the messes and the good stuff. And I think I've been in business online since 2004. And, you get tired of seeing the perfect picture. And when you've been in it as long as I've been in it, you start to realize those perfect pictures aren't reality. It's just that no one's talking about the real side of it. And I started probably in 2009 doing what I call getting real. dipping my toe in the water. But I'll tell you, every time I did get real, I would get way more response from people than when I was just playing the expert and sharing the expertise. And it took me a while, I think, to have it finally sink in that that's really what people want. You can sit there and tell everybody all the pretty stuff, but they really appreciate it when you tell them how it really is. And they can see that you struggle too, and you're human, because otherwise it's like, it's there, but they're not talking about it. So can you really trust what they're saying? But you have to get to that place where you're comfortable. And I think, I don't know what it takes to get there. Maybe it just takes getting to a certain age or a certain point where you're just like, I don't care anymore. I don't know.
Exactly. You hear the older women say, I've earned the right to say what I want. And so it's like you get to a point where you say, I earned the right to be who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to apologize for it.
Yeah.
And it comes to knowing yourself, who you really are inside, beyond the external stuff, because we are more than what our 9-to-5s are. We are more than some of these roles that have been defined for us. When you're able to embrace yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the quirks and all, I think that's where you can really walk into and lean into leading an inspired life, however one would define that for themselves.
Yeah. So is there anything you do in your life to help you stay open to the inspired ideas? For me, I spend time in nature, I run, I walk, meditate. Anything you do to kind of keep yourself in that space?
I do. Meditation is key for me. I have to meditate, get centered, be quiet, and writing. I'm a writer. I've been a writer since I was a little girl, and writing consistently sheds so much insight, and it allows me to spend time with myself, which I love, because I feel like I have this, what I would call, when I do the journal writing, like my higher self talking to me, ideas and insights that I would never get just sitting around just thinking about them. They come to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to get these rich insights and just spending that time with myself. And so, the meditation and the writing practice and spending time in nature. I like taking hikes. I love taking walks. That keeps me centered and keeps me grounded and really in tune with who I really am, because I don't plan out what I'm going to write. I just kind of see what comes out on the page. And I'm always amazed at what comes out and what surfaces when I stop just living. Because I'm one that have a tendency to live in my head space. Thinking, chatter. And then when I put stuff on paper, it's like, oh my gosh, this stuff came from me somewhere out there. So when I get out, what I call vomiting on the page, it really is great for me to do that.
I agree. I'm the same way. So a lot of times when I write, I go back and I read it later and I'm like, where'd that come from? Because it feels like it's coming through you, which yes. That's when I know that it's truly inspired. And it's the same, like if I'm out on a run and I think it's because we get out of our head, like you said, and we stop thinking, and we're not trying to figure stuff out. Like when we're sitting at our desk or working or banging our head against the wall, trying to solve a problem, when we just let it go and we go do something else, then we open up the space for that problem to be solved by a higher power other than us. Again, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, whatever, I don't care. And for those inspired ideas to drop right in.
That is so true. I get a lot of them just that way, because I think you said something that was really key, is in the letting go and not trying to control the how. And that was the biggest lesson for me to learn, Debbie. And she kept, I want to have it all figured out. I want to know how, I want to have it going to come, where it's going to come from. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, just let go and just start putting stuff out there, start living this inspired life. And then also, Debbie, I think for me, able to define what inspired looked like for me. I see all the marketing messages with all the images of perfection. I have this perfect life. I have all this time freedom. I have all this thing. I'm working on my yacht and all that. And for me, it's like, that's not what it means for me. It's being able to live my purpose of being sunshine and light into the world, and to bring my whole self to my work. Debbie, this week I had a client. I had her over my house. So I said, we're going to have a working session. We're just going to do some stuff. And so we had a working session, and she did something that was, for me, was a milestone. And she knows I like 1980s music because that's the era where I grew up in. I come of age, 1980s. So she put on the song. She said, let's dance. And I was like, yes, that was awesome. I mean, there's no way I can just, go in some places and say in my 9 to 5 and say, oh my gosh, let's dance without people thinking I'm a crazy woman. And so and to see her embrace the fullness of who she is and me embrace the fullness of who I am in that moment, to me was just priceless and so precious. And that's part of what living inspired means to me. It's doing what brings me joy. It's bringing what lights me up and being my authentic self. All of it. I mean, and it just makes the journey so worth it.
I love it. Yeah. Letting go is huge. Not always easy to do. Sounds like I'm kind of like you, or I used to be. I have done work for 10 years, but I was the epitome of the perfectionist, type A, control freak. I know I drove people that worked for me nuts when I worked in corporate America because I micromanaged everything. But, I had to hang on so tight. And that's been the key for me, is, as you said, learning how to let go of having to control everything and just being open. And what I've found out is it works out so much better and so much easier. But it was hard, sometimes I still hang on tight, it still creeps back in.
It does. I mean, some of those habits and way of being are, they're hard to break, until I believe, Debbie, that sometimes like-minded people kind of meet each other, because I didn't know. I mean, I met you in an unofficial mentor capacity from taking your classes on Udemy. I resonated with you. I resonated with your realness, your authenticity. So I've been able to see some of your journey and how you evolved from the marketing and that aspect of taking your classes. And, I remember you said you have to brand yourself. And I said, oh my gosh, how am I going to brand myself? How am I going to do that? And you were the business stylist back then. And I branded myself as the soulful healing coach. And so I've been able to learn from you, even in that point where you were teaching and you were at that space to reach people back then. And so you came across my path and in my awareness. And I'm like, okay, my gosh. And I guess maybe because I did see some similarities into who we are as people. And so I came on your radar, and then you came on my radar. And then here we are together today having this conversation because we're both living inspired lives, how we defined it. And it's been great really to see your journey and how you're evolving. And so I'm just loving the work that you're doing in the series and bringing like-minded women together, or people. The interviews I've seen have been women, but bringing like-minded people together.
Yeah. I got 2 men coming up. It's been more women so far, but I got 2 coming up, 1 tomorrow and 1 next week. So yeah, I'm loving it too. I really am. It's a totally different path. That's not a totally different path. It's a totally different public path for me. And I'm enjoying it. So before we wrap up here, I just want to ask you if there's one piece of advice that you would share with someone who either just wants to live a more inspired life, or if they'd like to build an inspired business. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to get quiet and listen, and not try to make something. All these years, Debbie, I would try to make something, trying to build a business, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's unfolding right now is bigger than anything that I could have planned on my own, sitting around trying to make something, and just to kind of trust your process and the journey, knowing that it's leading somewhere, and you don't have to have all the answers right now. I don't have everything figured out. What my life coaching practice is going to look like 5 years from now, I don't know. I'm just taking it day by day, one step at a time, and taking the time to nurture myself and feel that well. Those wounds and those things where I needed healing, able to do that and to recognize that, and that's okay with the messiness and the mess of it all, that I'm still okay as a human being, and just to embrace your story, embrace where you are right now. You're not a failure, that you haven't gotten to where you want to be. And you will get there, just trust the process. And just kind of, I like this image I have where it's just a woman and she's just letting go and she's just kind of just falling. She's okay and she's safe. She's not going to hit her head. Whatever you believe in, it's whatever you like you said, define it or call it, it's got you. it's going someplace. So just embrace it and just kind of let it flow and let it go.
I love it. I love it. And I mean, I've been very honest about this. I don't actually know where I'm going either. I have a vision of kind of what I think the end game looks like, but it's kind of fun just having a general idea and moving in that direction every day as you're inspired. This whole interview series was inspired, and it's leading me in a direction that I couldn't have planned and didn't know about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there's some fun in that. And so I think your advice is great, to just let it go and stop trying to make something, because I love that. I'm going to quote you on that. That's a good one.
You know, and I feel so free. You know, I feel alive. And that's one of the things I think sometimes we are missing, is that feeling of wonder or curiosity, you know, of just that alive feeling. When I'm just going through the process, it's just something I haven't felt since I was, you know, younger. You know, I remember I had this early memory of me just on this tricycle around this dumpster. You're just going and going and going, and you're just there, and you're just being. It's just like a certain freedom. You know, I mean, I'm on my tricycle. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm just going. You know, and there's something that's so freeing about that, and just and that letting go. It's scary at first to do that, because I've had a personality where I want to know the end game. I like playing with everything. Trying to be spontaneous is not how I roll usually. And however, it's just been something just so freeing and liberating about my whole journey and process to living the inspired life that I have now. And I'm just so pleased so much, and I'm happy. And I don't know how all the answers. I don't know where everything is going, but I'm really happy about where the space that I am, and I feel just so free and so alive.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I know it's going to inspire people. Your energy has me inspired, so I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.